built for frequent flight and heavy payloads, just like today's commercial airliners.
It's the product of years of rapid development, testing, iteration. We're trying to fly as frequently as possible, fix problems as they appear, and then fly again. It all started here at Starbase back with Starhopper. It was a small single Raptor prototype. Kind of looked like a water tower. We turned it into a water tower eventually. It made its first low-altitude hop back in 2019 here at Starbase. You could tell the pad, that's the pad that we were just looking at. It looks dramatically different now, 2 towers. But Starhopper delivered. It was able to prove that we could use that Raptor engine for controlled takeoff and landing.
And that is so wild to see that there on your screen was just 6 years ago, and now we're here today with a full-size vehicle. So from there, we moved to full-size test articles with increasingly complex test flights that reached progressively higher altitudes. And each test shaped the Starship that we see today on the pad, a stronger, taller, and more refined vehicle.
That's right. All right. Now, let's go out there and meet it. Starship is made up of 2 parts. First, on the bottom, the Super Heavy booster, powered by 33 Raptor engines. Both Super Heavy and Ship are running on liquid methane and liquid oxygen. That second stage, the Starship upper stage, is powered by 6 of those Raptor engines. 3 of them are optimized to sea level performance, 3 for vacuum, so operating while they're in space. And here's a quick look under the hood at all of those Raptors. On the left, that's a view from underneath the launch mount. That's 33 Raptor engines on the first stage, on the booster. And on the right, that's a view inside of the ship. So you're looking down at the top of the booster at 6 Raptor engines inside the ship. Those are what's going to power it to orbit. Now, that second stage is also what will one day carry cargo, payloads, people, everything that's going to space. It's also going to be responsible for in-space propellant transfer. That's where we're going to take 2 Starships, meet them up in orbit. One will be able to transfer propellant to the other. That's a really critical capability for Starship to do all of these missions beyond low Earth orbit. That also unlocks our ability to send huge amounts of cargo, tremendous amounts of people to destinations far beyond Earth.
Yeah, the Super Heavy booster is designed to launch, separate, flip, and return to the launch site where it can be caught by the chopsticks on the launch tower. Though, as we mentioned earlier, we are not attempting a booster catch today on Flight 9. Starship re-enters the Earth's atmosphere at the conclusion of its mission, steering itself to a vertical landing or catch. And both stages are designed to return to Earth and fly again, making this the first rocket in history that will be fully reusable.
And then just in between the 2 vehicles is what's known as the hot stage ring. That's a steel structure that really takes the brunt of those ship engines as they ignite, protecting the booster while the ship's still attached to it. That enables us to do hot staging. It's faster, more efficient, and kind of shutting everything down and then reigniting. Right now, that hot stage it's single use. It detaches from the booster as it flies back. But in the future, it's going to be integrated right into the top. And then on top of all of that, there's all of the infrastructure that's built up around it to support Starship. We call it Stage 0. That's everything, the launch pads, the propellant farm, launch towers, chopsticks that are catching the booster out of the air, stacking the ship, all of that. And you may have noticed we have a new addition out there near the pad. The orbital launch mount for Pad 2 has officially been installed. That's starting to come together. Just like Pad 1, Pad 2 has a launch mount. That's where you're going to put Super Heavy on top. We also have a launch tower with arms, a little bit shorter on that one. That's going to be used to stack the Starship on top, put the booster on top, catch the booster, catch the Starship. We did put the orbital launch mount on there. That's responsible for routing all of the propellant to the booster ahead of flight. Underneath it, you've got flame deflectors, the water deluge system to disperse all of those forces. The single piece we just lifted in weighs about 1,060 metric tons, which, if you're keeping score at home, that's the same weight as about 10 Millennium Falcons. It's heavy.
That's a lot of Millennium Falcons,
so
Dan.
Many.
We're also currently in work on Starship's brand new pad at Kennedy Space Center's Launch Complex 39A, and we're hoping to bring that online later this year as well. Tons of progress with Starship so far in 2025, and lots of incredible milestones still coming up. And we are still on track to lift off tonight at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. And right now, it's time to say hi to Chris, who's over there repping the West Coast Ops today. How's it going, Chris?
Hey, Jesse and Dan, and welcome everyone to West Coast and Hawthorne, California. As you can see behind me, the crowd is gathering outside of our mission control room here in Hawthorne, and the excitement is really palpable as we continue to count down towards Starship's 9th flight test. Now, our mission control room here in Hawthorne usually serves as the mission control room for our Falcon and Dragon missions once they launch from Florida and California. Now, with Starship, all countdown and mission control operations actually use the same flight control team from the same location at Starbase, which you can see on your screen now. But as we develop a vehicle like Starship, we want as many experts watching over its various systems as we can. And that's what we use the mission control room here in Hawthorne for during Starship flight tests like today's. The folks in mission control, which you see now on your screen, are the responsible engineers for Starship's various systems. This includes things like booster systems, stage propellant, our ground stations, flight software, the loads, and the vehicle structures as well. And having this support gives the flight teams in Starbase immediate access to our engineers' knowledge, which is really, really important when we're making informed decisions very quickly in a test program like this. This setup has been great for Starship flight tests so far, as we've handled things like propellant temperature differences, as well as day-of-launch winds that can affect the loads placed on Starship structures during launch, and particularly during the descent of the Super Heavy booster back to Earth. So having all of these responsible engineers ready to support is crucial during Starship testing, where we place hardware in flight conditions quickly to iterate and make the best and most reliable rocket that we can. So it's definitely a full house, a growing full house here in Hawthorne for our 9th flight of Starship today. Every flight brings us a step closer to a future where Starship is flying multiple times a day, and I'm sure you all feel the same way down there in Texas, Dan and Jesse, but I can't wait to see Starship's launch today. How about you?
Yeah, can't wait to see it, Chris. As you can see, props loading on the vehicle is just a little under 2 miles away from us, and we're really excited. Looking back real quick, so back in March, Starship's 8th flight test saw us catch the Super Heavy booster for the 3rd time ever, another big step on that path to full and rapid reusability. Unfortunately, the Starship upper stage did experience what we call a rapid, unscheduled disassembly before it finished its climb to space, which meant we didn't reach all of those additional mission objectives that we had set.
About 5.5 minutes into ship's ascent burn, a hardware failure in one of its sea-level Raptor engines took out that engine, the 2 remaining sea-level engines, and a Raptor vacuum engine. That's 4 of the 6 engines that ship has. This was a different failure than we saw on Flight 7, and the fixes that we put in place did work as expected. So
to assist with anything like debris cleanup, we can coordinate with all the necessary parties, organizations, administrations for safety in advance and in an ongoing basis during our test campaigns to plan for as many possible outcomes. Definitely do want to say thank you, though, to the people of the Bahamas, the government of the Bahamas, who worked with us so closely since Flight 8.
We took full responsibility for the cleanup, and in doing so, we had people on the ground in the Bahamas within 12 hours to help with debris recovery. So all that said, we're moving forward in our development cycle with safety at the top of mind, and we fly again today to get this current iteration of ship to space and back.
That's right. Putting hardware in a flight environment as frequently as possible, so you're seeing how things behave all together in the real world. Then you're solving problems as they pop up. That's how SpaceX developed their very first rocket, Falcon 1. Same philosophy was used to develop Falcon 9.
Today, we're looking to get our first re-entry with the latest iteration of ship, while intentionally stressing the Super Heavy vehicle during its return to get data on its boundaries. And by stressing, we mean that we'll be pushing the flight envelope of Super Heavy as we fly at a higher angle of attack during descent towards the Gulf. Angle of attack in this case means that Super Heavy is pitched up to maximize drag and slow return. Because of this test, we will not be attempting to catch and recover Super Heavy, which again is flying for its 2nd time today. So for a brief moment, this booster will hold the title as the Super Heavy flight leader.
That's right. All right. Lot still ahead for today. Let's get into it real quick with this overview. As always, everything starts with a liftoff. 33 Raptor engines igniting. Super Heavy pushing itself and Starship into ascent over the Gulf. It's going to continue for about 2.5 minutes before we get to hot staging. Ship will ignite in its engines. Booster will do its boost back burn and begin its flight experiments back for a hard splashdown in the Gulf of America. Meanwhile, ship continues its burn into space.
And ship will remain suborbital. We will be deploying 8 Starlink simulator satellites and then head towards re-entry re-entry. We'll relight a Raptor engine as well as test experiments during re-entry, such as missing tiles, metallic tiles, loading the vehicle's flaps, and then ship will attempt a flip maneuver. And if all goes planned, we'll conclude the test with a soft water splashdown in the Indian Ocean. So that's what we have on the menu for Flight 9 today.
Whole lot.
Flight 8's RUD taught us new lessons about Starship hardware, specifically the Raptor engines. And as we touched on earlier, the root cause was traced to a hardware failure in one of Starship's 3 center Raptor engines.
Yeah, just since that flight, we've done more than 100 long-duration Raptor tests at our facility in McGregor. Huge shout-out to that team for really putting in the work to better understand what happened. As a result, the engines that are on Starship's upper stage on the pad right behind us have a few changes. One of the key ones we did was additional preload on some of the joints, essentially some additional torquing, a new nitrogen purge system for the engines themselves, and made some improvements to the propellant drain system.
After our first ever super heavy refurb campaign, we static fired with all 33 Raptor engines. This was a chance to see all the hardware operating together, and for this flight, our teams had an opportunity to make adjustments or hardware replacements for this first ever reflight of the super heavy booster.
And then it was ship's turn. We took it through several static fires. First, we did this short duration single engine burn to simulate an in-space reignition of Raptor using those header tanks, those smaller tanks up in the nose cone. We also completed a longer duration 60-second burn with all 6 engines. So where you're really putting the entire propulsion system that's going to be used for the ship's ascent into space through the paces, making sure everything's working together before we go stack it on the pad.
And in the end, these changes represent the core of our test program. And reflying a booster for the first time is a major milestone, especially so early in the flight test program. Now, Falcon did it in just over 30 flights.
And Starship's doing it today on just its 9th flight. It's not wild just because of how much faster that is, but just how much bigger Starship is. Falcon 9 can lift about 23 metric tons into orbit. Starship is designed to lift 200.
That is so exciting. And on top of that, we're also reflying engine 314 for its 3rd flight, which you might recall is the engine with a pie on the nozzle. And there you can see that engine there. It is a milestone, most definitely, but we do remain focused on getting to the point where no refurbishment is needed between any of the flights.
Yeah, that means we want to launch it, bring it back, look at it, reload propellants, go again. That is really what's key. That is what full and rapid reusability will look like.
We're coming to you today from Star Factory, our new 1 million square foot manufacturing facility in Starbase, Texas. The Super Heavy booster is the first stage of the Starship launch vehicle stack. It's the largest boost stage ever developed for any rocket ever. Having the largest rocket ever is a very cool engineering feat, but the thing that really makes a difference is the ability to rapidly reuse that rocket to launch many other missions. Reflying Booster 14 is an important first milestone in that we have proven that we can recover a vehicle, turn it around, and fly it a second time. But it's not a victory lap yet.
From an operational perspective, an ideal state looks like a vehicle where very few things have to happen on it in order to take back off again. So we catch the vehicle, put it back onto the launch mount, put a new ship back on top with its payload, refuel, and take back off. And that same booster will come back to the launch mount, and we do the same thing all over again. Falcon is, reusing at a pretty high rate, and we get to go look at them and say, what did you learn? What is good? What is bad? And as we continue to build the Starship process.
Zero-touch refurbishment really looks like a commercial airliner. The advantage we have on Booster relative to when we developed Falcon 9, for instance, is this was really designed from the outset for rapid reusability.
We're using all of the flight test learnings from our version 1 and version 2 vehicles in our orbital flight test campaign to inform the design of our version 3 vehicle.
The next generation vehicle will be the first time that we've really attempted to make rapidly reusable thermal protection on a rocket. In the next iteration, we'll be able to add in new innovative materials and regenerative cooling that will enable rapid zero-touch refurbishment.
Rapid reusability, the ability to fly, turn the vehicle around, and refly again immediately is really the key goal of the Starship program.
It is so cool to see our teams working together as Starship is learning from Falcon with reusability, and now we're seeing Starship do the same thing today. So all eyes on the rocket on the pad, getting ready to launch in just about 17 minutes from now.
That's right. Looking at our levels real quick, we're a little bit more than halfway full on fuel and LOX on the booster, over 80% full on the ship. Still have to fill those header tanks, but everything looking good. We're not tracking any issues on the range. As a reminder, we watch sea states, air, and land around the launch site here and also over in the Indian Ocean where we're going to be doing our reentry. Not tracking any blockers to launch at the moment. Weather is gorgeous, has not been a concern all day for launch. We've been moving through all of our pre-flight checkouts pretty smoothly so far this morning, getting the ship and the booster ready for prop load, making sure guidance, navigation, and control are aligned. Everything's ready to go. You can see with the frost coming off, we're getting pretty full. We started loading all of the propellants on board both ships about 45 minutes or so before launch. They kind of stagger where we start with ship and then move into booster. We're going to continue loading these propellants on board until just about 3 minutes before liftoff. We'll close out on the ship first and then on the booster. But bottom line, everything's looking great. Not tracking any vehicle issues, range issues, weather issues. We're looking really good right now for a launch at the top of our window right at 6:30 p.m. Central.
Yeah, seeing the propellant loading is making this getting more and more exciting. Today is going to be a wild ride for Super Heavy. We're putting the booster through several tests to expand the envelope on its capabilities and get flight data to make its return and catch more reliable. Now, another unique change in today's flight will be the addition of the first ever directional flip of the booster.
That's right. If you followed previous flights and you kind of wonder to yourself, why does the direction of the booster flip seem random? Surprise, it's because it was. We've got a couple of views from previous flights where you'll see the booster kind of go in different directions, and it was really small differences in the thrust of those ship engines. As they started up, they would nudge the booster in an initial direction, and so the booster would essentially sense that and then lean into it, and it'll react, the engines will gimbal, and then it'll continue the flip. That was the easiest option technically, but you do take some performance hits since you're essentially setting aside propellant to accommodate every single direction for a flip.
Exactly, but if we know which direction we're flipping, then we know how much propellant we will need and can instead use more of the propellant to burn longer during ascent, adding more velocity to ship and increasing how much payload it can ultimately deliver to space.
Yeah, so today I got my trusty Super Heavy here. We're going to intentionally try to flip straight up. So as you're separating from the ship, we want to get to here as you're doing that boost back burn. The fastest way is to just flip straight up and go into it. That's roughly what we did on Flight 5. It's the most direct way to get into that orientation for the boost back burn. What you don't want to do is when you flip all the way down like that, we did that on Flight 7, it takes you in a big loop, uses the most amount of prop, not efficient. We're at the point where we want to start kind of tuning it in and getting some extra performance out of the booster.
Yeah, exactly. That's called optimization.
That's right.
To accomplish this, we made some changes to the hot stage adapter, welding reinforced panels over the vents in the direction that we want the booster to go. So when the ship engines ignite, the thrust will push against the blocked vents, which means that the nudge will be in the direction that we planned for. And then when we go to the next generation of ship and booster, we plan to control the flip direction by fine-tuning the engine startup sequence on the ship.
Yeah, that's not the only flight experiment that we have planned for the booster today. We're not attempting a catch, so we're going to try and gather additional data that's going to improve performance on future boosters. We're also going to try and see how resilient we are to things like losing an engine during the landing burn. By sending the booster out to sea, we're able to do these higher risk tests without risking the launch pad. As you might have heard earlier, we're going to be doing what's called a higher angle of attack. Basically, instead of coming straight down, we're going to tilt up a little bit. That gets you more drag on the booster. You're able to use just aerodynamic forces to slow you down. The slower you're going at the start of that landing burn, the less propellant you need, because really you're just focused on slowing down as much as humanly possible when you fire that up. So by already going a little bit slower, we'll get some benefits to our performance and our reliability on those burns.
Yeah, exactly. And there's definite uncertainty in how well the booster's grid fins and structure will be able to control its flight when we get into higher angles. So don't be surprised if it isn't a smooth descent for the booster down to its splashdown point today. The most important objective of this portion of the test will be getting actual flight data to help anchor our models. Now, we're hoping to fly the next generation of super heavy boosters at even higher angles of attack. So this test today will give us a better idea of what is feasible. Now, on top of all of this, we're going to see how resilient Super Heavy is to engine failures at the most critical times.
Yeah, we're going to intentionally disable one of those 3 center engines and instead use an engine from the middle ring that's kind of right behind it. Those center engines are what we nominally use at the very last part of a landing burn as you're just kind of fine-tuning the booster's path into those waiting chopstick arms. This is going to act as a real-world simulation of a pretty scary situation where engines are not starting at probably the worst possible time, but we're going to do this without risking the pad. And then, at the very end of the landing burn, we're going to cut one more engine off and go down to only those 2 center engines. The burn is going to end while Super Heavy is still several hundred feet above the Gulf, so we expect it to make a pretty hard splashdown today. So, in all, pretty eventful day for the booster.
And as many of you may know, water landings are actually uncommon for SpaceX. While other launch providers expend all of their boosters after flight, we land and reuse most of ours. All of these tests are going to help us improve future generations of Super Heavy until we reach its fundamental design, a fully and rapidly reusable and reliable rocket. All right, let's check back in with Chris in Hawthorne. How's it going, Chris?
Hey, Jesse, my colleagues here in Hawthorne definitely agree with you. We can't wait to see the Super Heavy perform its second flight and see all of the work from our thousands of engineers and technicians in action today. Now, while this reuse milestone is incredibly important for Starship's development, Super Heavy boosters are not the only vehicles that we reuse here at SpaceX. We're big on reuse, and our Dragon fleet is another example of that reuse. And we actually control those Dragon missions from right here in Hawthorne in the mission control room that we talked about a little bit earlier. For Dragon and our human spaceflight program, this month also marks a big milestone for SpaceX, our 5-year anniversary of human spaceflight. Now, NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley got us started back on Demo 2, which was notable for being the first time since the retirement of the shuttle program in 2011 that people launched to orbit from U.S. soil. Now, in those 5 years, we have launched 17 human spaceflight missions, 11 for NASA, and 6 commercial missions, including Polaris Dawn, with our first commercial spacewalk in history, and From 2 earlier this year, which became the first human spaceflight mission ever to explore Earth's polar regions. We've flown a total of 66 crew in those 5 years, and we are expecting that number to grow significantly in the coming years. Now, most recently on our From 2 mission, the crew offered unique glimpses into the orbital spaceflight experience. And this was honestly just so cool to see. Thank you to our Starlink teams for making everything with the From 2 crew shared possible. This honestly made me feel like I was right there with them in Dragon. They were living, they were working, they were relaxing, they were doing their experiments while also having fun. Basically, just being people and inviting us along for the ride. And that was really meaningful. Being invited up there really showed how these are just the early days on the road to making life multiplanetary. And the vehicle that's going to make all of that happen is Starship. And Dan and Jesse, I don't know about you, but that is definitely a future I have wanted since I was a little kid, and I cannot wait to see us make it a reality.
Yeah, right there with you, Chris. It's the fact that we're getting close to that being reality, that the vehicle that's going to go is sitting on the pad right there. Like, that's endlessly exciting. All of that's going to include sending humans, all of the infrastructure for a permanent presence on Mars. And we're looking ahead to sending the very first Starships to Mars as early as next year.
Yeah, this will help prove that we can actually get to Mars with a focus on learning as much as possible while demonstrating what will be needed for Mars transit and landing. But before we can make life multiplanetary, we have to build the Starships that will make this all possible.
That's right. And that's happening right here, Starbase, Texas, the gateway to Mars. This is where we're soon going to be launching up to 25 Starship launches per year from here at Starbase. and the place is changing every single day. We've grown quite a bit just in the last couple of years. There's a couple hundred employees, their families living amongst actual rockets. We're in the process of expanding production and integration. We've got a target of 1,000 Starships a year we're going to try to hit. And recently, we did become a city of our own. We're the first city in Cameron County in 30 years. And that's just going to help us scale more quickly, try to build out the best community possible for all the people that are building the future of humanity's place in space. Starbase, pretty easily one of the most inspiring, exciting, unique places to live and work on the planet. As usual, shameless plug, we're always hiring. Come help us build the gateway to Mars. Visit spacex.com/careers. You can see all of our openings.
And this is my first time in Starbase, and Dan, the Star Factory